The Andy Pollin Show.
We got to go after this with everything we got, figuring they're going to come with everything they got.
I'll start off by saying I'm bored, I'm broke, and I'm back.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630 starts right now.
Not surprising, Aaron Rodgers is signing with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Somewhat surprising is the negotiations between the Commanders and Terry McLaurin have gotten a little bit testy, to put it mildly. We'll get into a report on that with McLaurin, a no-show at the OTAs this week. We'll see if he shows up at mandatory minicamp next week. He skipped it 3 years ago in his last negotiation. Could be headed in that direction as well. And really cool stuff from Eli Manning on the Glue Guys podcast. Everybody thought that Eli Manning, when he was playing, was kind of a dolt. His brother was funny. Nobody knew that Eli was funny until he retired, and now he's almost as funny as Peyton, maybe as funny. And really good stuff that we will get to in the 10 o'clock hour. And we'll deal more with the Terry McLaurin situation. It's a report, and it's things that happen often in contract negotiations. As great a person as Terry McLaurin is, as great a player as he has been, you got to go through these kind of dances to get to where you want to go. And we'll go through that coming up. But last night, Indiana Pacers playing at the Oklahoma City Thunder, and they did it again.
They're not going to call a timeout. Halliburton has it with 3, driving with 2, pulling up, and hitting with 0.3 of a second to go. How many more times can this team do that?
That is Mark Boyle, voice of the Indiana Pacers. He's been doing their games for nearly 40 years. They had been to the finals one other time, and now they're back in as huge underdogs, still underdogs, but things have taken a different turn, haven't they? And if you're like me and you tuned out at halftime with Oklahoma City up 12 points and Indiana just throwing up all over themselves. They had 19 turnovers in the first half. They had 25 for the game. But here's the thing. Oklahoma City turned those 25 turnovers into only 11 points. That's absolutely stunning. They had a chance to bury them with those 19 turnovers in the first half. Didn't do it. Allowed Indiana enough time to do what they've done throughout the playoffs, and I'll get to some of the numbers here in a moment, but they were the victim of Therese Halliburton knocking down what turned out to be the game-winning shot, as he has done time and time again. And the total amount of time that the Indiana Pacers led in this game was 0.3 seconds. The shot you just heard from Halliburton, that gave the Pacers the first lead in the game as they were able to win 111-110. Just absolutely remarkable. Here are some more of those numbers. I think that number on turnovers is stunning to me. 25 turnovers turning into only 11 points. But this is the first time in 15 months, Tuesday, March 12th, 2024, the last time the Thunder lost at home to an Eastern Conference team. That team, the Indiana Pacers. Pacers committed, as I say, 25 turnovers, still won. Their turnover differential of -19 is the worst for a team in the NBA Finals victory and clears the second worst team, the 1974 Bucks, by 7. So not only did they have the turnover margin differential in a negative way for them, it's by far the worst. The previous worst would have been 12 by the 1974 Bucks, who lost in 7 games to the Boston Celtics. The 15-point fourth-quarter comeback tied for the fourth largest in NBA Finals since 1971. I kind of would be more interested in the number since 1980, because the 1979-80 was the first time we had the three-point shot. Three-point shot changes a lot of things in comebacks, but still a stunning comeback. The last 2 fourth-quarter comebacks of at least 15 points in the NBA Finals have been teams coached by Rick Carlisle. The game last night, and then Thursday, June 2nd, 2011, when Carlisle's Mavericks beat the Heat. The postseason, when the Pacers have faced deficits of at least 15 points, their record is 5-3. Not many teams come back from 15 points. They're 5-3. When they're down at least 15. Indiana's record this postseason in clutch games is 8-1. The Pacers took their first lead as I say, on the jumper from Halliburton with 0.3 seconds left. It marks the latest into a finals game since 71 that the team has taken its first lead of the game. They keep referring, by the way, to the 71 finals. That was a walkover for the Milwaukee Bucks over the Baltimore Bullets. I don't remember the Bullets being close in any of those games, but I guess this is when they started to keep more intricate stats. The comeback marked Indiana's fifth comeback from a deficit of at least 15 points in the 2025 playoffs, most by a team in a single postseason since 1998. Since 71, teams that had trailed by at least 9 points inside the final 3 minutes of the finals game had been 0-182. It is now 1-182. Once again, 9 points inside the final 3 minutes, 0-182. For the first time in the finals since 71, team down by 9 points in the last 3 minutes comes back to win. Wow. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, 38 points. No shame there. It's the most by a third most by a player in his NBA Finals debut, behind Allen Iverson's 48 in 2001 and George Mikan, 42 in 1949. So he did his part. SGA did his part, but in the end, Indiana found a way to win, which they have done. During the regular season and the playoffs, Tyrese Halliburton is 13 of 15 for shots inside the final 2 minutes, including overtime, to tie or take the lead. That gives him a shooting percentage of 86%. You talk about clutch. Wow. 6 of those 13 made field goals were three-pointers, so he scored 32 points in those 15 shots, giving him more than an average of 2 points per shot. Amazing. Absolutely amazing. Halliburton now tied for second with former Pacers legend Reggie Miller with 5 field goals to tie or take the lead inside the final 5 seconds of an NBA playoff game since 1997. We've talked about what Reggie did to the Knicks back in the day. Incredible. After it was over, Scott Van Pelt, who had been kind of a doubter with Tyrese Halliburton and the Pacers, looking at what they had done, especially at the start of the regular season, and what an enormous favorite Oklahoma City is in these finals. It's one of the biggest of all time. They're plus 700 on this. So they are enormous favorites to win this. Yet, once again, Indiana found a way to win. Once again, Tyrese Halliburton comes up with the clutch shot, and he joined SVP to talk about it.
How do you describe the frantic last couple of moments leading up to the moment? Because you never led all night. You're down 15 in the fourth. This place is a madhouse. You guys never blinked. What's playing out in real time in all of your minds?
Just stay at it. We're a resilient group. We just keep saying that to you guys. You guys keep asking us. I keep giving you the same answer. We're a resilient group, and we don't give up till the clock hits 0. So we do a great job of just staying in the moment. Trying to get it from 15 to 10, 10 to 5, 5 to 0. And we just walk teams down. Really proud of this group.
I'm keeping notes here as this is playing out in the fourth. There were a couple of times where you got it to 4. Miles, who had a tremendous game, had a clean look. Yeah. It didn't go. I'm wondering, have they missed their chance? But then you got another chance, and I believe it was Neesmith at the rim. Yeah. No call in the other way. SGA gets a bucket. It's back to 5, and I'm wondering, did you miss your mark? But you guys don't blink, and I understand there's belief, but at some point, man, the clock, you start running out of seconds. Yeah. I guess at some point I'm wondering how you all are able to continue to do this when the moments keep getting bigger and you all seem to get calmer.
Yeah, I think the way that normal people think, like you're talking about, we're going to run out of time.
So you're abnormal.
I just don't. I mean, no, we're human, but I just don't think we believe that until the clock hits 0. Like, truthfully, that's just how we believe it. And I think here's the thing: is like we've had to win in so many different ways all year. We've had so many weird wins during the regular season, during the playoffs. So why would that change? Because we're here in the finals. It's not changing. So we just keep staying at it and just keep believing, and that's the result we get.
I want to go all the way back to the beginning. Does anything at all feel different about this night, this game, this stage, given what it is? It is the finals. Did it feel different at all?
I mean, I got to go back and watch the film, but I felt like I was jittery.
You don't have to watch the film to tell me how it felt. How did you feel inside?
I felt jittery in the first half.
It looked
honestly.
That way.
Yeah, I felt jittery. I was playing too fast. I was out of control. I mean, we had, like 20 turnovers in, like, the first half.
That's the most you've had in 25 years.
Yeah, and just very uncharacteristic of us.
How much of that's them?
A lot. They're a historic defense. They're a great defense, but I just think we caught ourselves driving with no plan. Against this team, if you drive with no plan, it can get ugly. It can get ugly quick.
You can get lost.
Yeah, exactly. So we just got to do a better job of driving with a plan, and playing with some more controlled chaos. We love chaos, but they love chaos too, but we need it to be more controlled. And we'll watch the film, see if we can get better. I thought we were a lot better in the second half. I think in the third quarter, we have 3 turnovers for 3 fast break points, 3 points off turnovers, something like that.
And that's winning basketball. So, there's a lot for us to improve on with this game. We'll go back and watch the film and see where we can get better.
I was visiting with one of your coaches pregame, and they mentioned to me that you all have become elite problem solvers.
Yeah.
I thought that was such an interesting way to describe it. How do you make that make sense to me in the audience? The idea of becoming elite problem solvers in real time on a stage like this against a team like that.
Yeah, I just think it's the trust that we have from our staff. Really, I think Coach Carlisle trusts us. You see in that last play, he doesn't call timeout. Most coaches would call timeout in that play. He trusts us, and I think
that trust comes from having to find different ways to win throughout the regular season. And
this group, we've been together now. This is our second full year together, really, as all of us as a group. And our front office, kudos to them for believing in this group, keeping us together after a run last year. And I just think that's why we're battle tested, and we just figure out ways to win.
This is me trusting my director to continue showing this play, because I think Lou Dort is as good a defender as there is on planet Earth, and that you don't call a timeout, which makes sense to me, because then you don't. Let me just see if I can get up clean and get a look.
Yeah, I just think if I get to my spot and just rise up, I got a lot of trust, and I work my tail off.
And as you go out of here, wherever you go tonight with the team, and you process this moment, how do you process what you just did on this stage? I keep saying this stage, but it is a stage.
Yeah, it's special. It's a special thing, but we're still 3 wins away. We really feel like we got outplayed for 3.5 quarters of this game. We just found a way to win at the end. So there's a lot for us to dive into film. We got a couple days to look at it, see where we can get better. But I don't think there's any reason to, go crazy and celebrate anything crazy. Just watch the film, everybody take care of their bodies, and let's get ready to play in a couple days, because this is a good team. We got to play back in this building, and they're going to be prepared, and they're going to be prepared to come back at us. So we just got to stick with it, and not go too crazy. There's still a lot more work to be done.
They tell us in this business either or questions are terrible, so I don't mean it to come off as either or, but I wonder, when you make this many shots, you make this many buckets, if you wonder if at some point you're going to run out of money in your pocket, or if you start thinking, I've got a pocket full of cash when it matters, I imagine the answer is that you believe that pocket is full of game winners if necessary. I know that's the answer, but how does that belief grow after the New York game and after this game?
Yeah, I just keep my head down, and like I said, I work really hard. I feel like throughout this playoff run, all these shots I've made are shots that I work on every day. Playing one-on-one with our player interns, figuring out different ways to make shots, make plays. And I think us as a group, we just really stay at it. So I never lose belief in our group. I never lose belief. If I lose belief in taking a shot at the end of the game, we're probably screwed. So I just gotta stick with it and stay confident and keep making plays.
The other night on the show, I put my hand up and I said, "Look, I was late to the party on it."
Yeah, you're a real one for that.
Well,
I heard that. You're a real one for that.
Well,
but a lot of your counterparts won't admit that now.
Well,
so
okay, now I'm going to give myself a little wiggle room here and say you guys are under 500 at Christmas. Am I right?
Yeah,
we were rough.
Okay,
we were rough.
So were you bad at the start?
We were.
So all I said is I was a little late to the party, but I put my hand up.
We were late to the party too.
Okay, well then I'm going to be. I'll be a real one right now. Every single note I had on this card getting ready for this show was about Oklahoma City winning this game, and I'm sitting here with you.
Yeah, and Tyrese Halliburton is the story of the postseason for sure, and we'll see what happens in Game 2 on Sunday night. But I look at it this way: Indiana's not going to have 25 turnovers on Sunday night. And whatever turnovers they have, and Oklahoma City does a great job defensively, and they turn you over, they got to turn it into points on the other end, which they didn't do. And if you look at, maybe how Indiana played, and you heard Halliburton say how jittery he was at the beginning of the game, and the rest of the team did as well. They fell behind early 7-0 and, got back in it, but still were down 12 at the half. If they're fully mentally prepared and confident, because they're playing with house money. All the pressure's on Oklahoma City. They're enormous favorites. They're playing at home in Game 2. They know they got to win Game 2 of this series. They don't want to go to Indiana down 0-2. So you're going to have an Indiana team that's playing loose, coming off what was a pretty rough performance all around. You don't think that Halliburton's going to get only 14 points again. He's probably going to score more than that. And Pascal Siakam, he had a nice game for them, 19 points and 10 rebounds, and had a big shot in the last minute to help set up the game winner there by Halliburton. But I would be concerned if I'm Oklahoma City, because you just lost to a team that beat you with its B- game. If they come with their A game on Sunday night, it could be in big trouble. And it's been 50 years, and most people can't relate to this, but the Washington Bullets were big favorites going into that series against the Golden State Warriors. The Bullets had won, I believe, 60 games that year, and Golden State, maybe similar, had trouble finding its footing, and they go into the finals. Now, they had the best player on the floor in Rick Barry. Rick Barry was tremendous in that series, and they were a deeper team, which made a difference. But the Bullets got swept. I'm not saying Oklahoma City is going to get swept in this thing, but this now takes on a totally different look than we had going into it, where most people who have been observing the NBA said, yeah, Oklahoma City, they just don't lose. 68 wins during the regular season. They're unbelievable at home. The arena that they're in Oklahoma City is a tough place to play. They're a deep team. They play great defense. Defense always ramps up in the playoffs. And now they find themselves in some pretty big trouble. And the pressure, I'm sure, is ramping up in a big way for them. All right, coming up, it's crazy what's happened with the Colorado Rockies. They won their last three. They swept Miami in a series, something they hadn't done since really last year. It had been 21 straight series without a sweep, which they finally did. They finally did sweep Miami, but they are still 12-50. And Jack Corrigan, who's their play-by-play guy, was on with Dan Patrick yesterday talking about what it's like to do a team with a record like that. We'll get to that and more as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
Before we get to the hapless Colorado Rockies, I want to talk a little bit about Terry McLaurin. We'll deal with Aaron Rodgers at 10 o'clock. He's headed to Pittsburgh, and all the drama that follows along with him. Tony Kornheiser and Pablo Torre, who's in for Wilbon yesterday, kicked it around on PTI. We'll play what they said, and I'll have some thoughts on it as well. This surfaced yesterday. It could be a big nothing burger, or it could turn into something. But where you're starving for NFL stories at this time of year, and this came out earlier in the afternoon than the Rodgers news, going to Pittsburgh. NFL insider Jordan Schultz, who I'm not familiar with, but apparently has enough of a platform for other platforms to pick this up and say, yeah, maybe there's something here. And he has reported that Terry McLaurin, who will turn 30 years old right after the season begins, September 15th, that he has become frustrated with the lack of progress on a long-term deal, and that he did show up for the OTAs. Now, he was not on the field the last few days. I think they have one more day today, and then they wrap things up, and then we'll have the mandatory minicamp next week. But he's reporting that he actually did show up, and I guess talked to somebody, Adam Peters or whoever, and decided, not worth it for me to be here. So he left. Not going to be fined for it because these OTAs aren't mandatory, but next week is minicamp, and it is mandatory. And as much of a mensch as Terry McLaurin has been since he got here in 2019, playing for a ridiculous slew of quarterbacks and never complaining. And the most games he had played with one quarterback prior to last season, when Jaden Daniels came in, was Taylor Heineke, who's, was on has been chronicled many times, was sleeping on his sister's couch when they needed a COVID quarterback to come in 2020, and he wound up, starting for a good chunk of the next couple of years. But he's not an NFL starting quarterback. He's just not. I mean, it's not that McLaurin didn't have an elite quarterback like he has now. He had no starting quarterback. He had quarterbacks who are not of starting caliber. And to take nothing away from Jerry Rice, who's the greatest receiver in the history of the league, the bulk of his career, he caught passes from Joe Montana and Steve Young, two Hall of Fame quarterbacks. A little bit different story. So McLaurin has thrived as he did last year. 82 catches, over 1,000 yards, 13 touchdowns, which is a franchise record. He was a Pro Bowler. He benefited clearly from Jaden Daniels, and I think Daniels would be the first to tell you that he benefited from having Terry McLaurin as something of a mentor there and someone he could rely on to run accurate patterns and do exactly what they wanted to do together, and they made magic. There's no question about it. But here's the problem here with Terry McLaurin. One is he's turning 30 years old. The other thing that I think is a bit of an issue is that he's had 2 concussions since he came to Washington. He also had one when he was playing at Ohio State. You get to 4 or 5 during the course of a career, you start to worry about that. Now, he has stayed healthy the last 3 seasons. He has not had any injuries to speak of in 2022, 2023, and 2024. That's a plus. But he did have one in 2021. It did not cause him to miss a game. He missed a game in 2020 because of an ankle injury. He had another concussion in 2019, and that caused him to miss 1 game, and he also missed a game because of a hamstring injury. So since he's been here in 2019, he's missed a total of 3 games, and only one of them has been because of a concussion. So, take that for what it's worth. But remember, in 2022, he missed the mandatory minicamp, was fined for that. He eventually signed a 3-year extension worth $68 million. Now the price is going to jump up to $30 million plus, maybe close to 35, which puts him in the class of the best receivers in the league, which he's not. He's probably not even a top 10, maybe a top 15 receiver in the NFL, so you're going to pay him. I think he's got some leverage here in that he's got Jaden Daniels, developing in the way they want him to, and he's been a big part of his development, and they don't want to mess with that chemistry. But on the other hand, you got a receiver who's turning 30 years old. There's a lot of wear and tear on his body, having missed only a handful of games in these last 6 years. And, could he fall off the table? Could his skills really start to diminish next year after, when he's turning 32, 33? Not everybody plays until they're 42 like Jerry Rice. And, maybe he has a long-term deal in his future, even after this one. But the reality is he's probably got 2 or 3 good years left. And how much are you going to pay him to do that? Are you going to make him one of the top paid receivers in the league? And I don't know if they're going to do that. But, Terry McLaurin and conflict don't go together. He has been everything you could have asked for since he was taken in the 3rd round in 2019. He's been incredible on the field, and maybe even more incredible off the field. He's someone that you want to keep in your organization forever. After he retires, I don't know what his goals are, but he's somebody that you want to be associated with because he has represented himself. He's represented the team as well as anyone ever has in all the years I've been watching him since 1966. He is an absolutely incredible person. Seems to be. Let me say that in the post-OJ world. Seems to be an incredible a person and a great football player. And it's just a question of what the dollars are going to be. But, I'd be stunned. I'd be stunned if it gets to the point where he's holding out a training camp without a deal. I guess it's possible they don't have a deal worked out before minicamp starts next Tuesday. But I would be absolutely blown away if they don't give him an extension going into training camp. He's still got a year left on his contract. So, theoretically, he could hold out. And theoretically, they could have him play next season on the last year of the deal, and if they want to keep him, franchise him. But I don't think they want to do that. I think all this talk about brotherhood and they want to show the rest of the team, hey, I know things were really bad here before we got here last year, but we do things differently. And guys who fit in with our program, and as you hear Dan Quinn say all the time, we're not for everybody. Clearly, Terry McLaurin is for them. Somebody who fits in and leads the way he does, we're going to reward him. So, that's a sign to the rest of the team. And if they mistreat Terry McLaurin in the eyes of the players, you got to make a business decision here too. But if the other players feel like he's being mistreated, that's going to be a problem, I think, for the whole team and for Dan Quinn. All right, Jack Corrigan has been the voice of the Colorado Rockies, and the Colorado Rockies this year are historically bad. They're one of the fastest teams in history to get to 50 wins. They reach 50 losses, 50 losses before June 1st. I mean, you're down there with like the Cleveland Spiders of the 1800s. That's how bad they have been. Now they're coming off a sweep of the Miami Marlins, so they have picked up a little bit lately, but they're going to have one of the worst seasons ever, it appears, unless there's something miraculous that happens late in the season. But we've had teams that have gone through an entire year with only 50 losses. They got 50 losses before June 1st. And Corrigan, as he says here, this is not really his first rodeo with this kind of thing, as he told Dan Patrick.
When I started with the Indians back in 1985, 3 of my first 7 seasons covering the Indians, they lost more than 100 games. And so I learned early on in my play-by-play time, if you will, to really compartmentalize. The great Joe Tate, may he rest in peace, who was my first baseball partner, outstanding basketball announcer in the Basketball Hall of Fame for his work with the Cavaliers. Joe said to me, he goes, baseball's a 162 chapter book. All you do is worry about the chapter that night. And maybe one of the best things he said, you can be an awful team and you're going to still win 50, 60 games. So you tell yourself, well, tonight's one of the nights we're going to win. You get all excited, you do it. And then if you don't win, you leave the ballpark feeling even better because your odds have just improved by a game that you're still going to win 50 or 60.
Do you bring it home with you when you lose?
No, well, my wife might disagree with that. I think I've learned to separate it. I mean, I'll feel it. I was a college athlete and I've always been competitive. So when you aren't winning, yes, it does impact on you because you build a relationship with those players and coaches. But again, that's the beauty of baseball, Dan, is the next day you start over again. And who knows, this is a game that day where Kyle Freeland's going to go 7 innings and pitch great like he did yesterday for the Marlins, or Hunter Goodman hits a couple of home runs. And so that's what fortifies you, if you will.
I know you don't want to bite the hand that feeds, but how did the Rockies get in this situation?
Well, I think you can certainly look at where they are in terms of they have to be a draft and develop team. You're not going to get a free agent pitcher to come and pitch at altitude. It's just that simple. So from a pitching perspective, especially, you have to draft and sign international players that give you a chance on the mound. And through a number of years of rolling the dice and missing in the draft with players or having injuries happen, I think they have struggled to keep up in terms of depth of talent, Dan. I believe they need to fortify their scouting department. They need more scouts out on the road. They need more coaches on the road. The Rockies have, for example, at their low A team, they have 3 coaches. Well, when I started with the Indians in '85, the low A team had 3 coaches. And the way the game is now, you need more than that, and a lot of teams are doing that. So,
but the ownership is not committed.
Well, yeah, in that regard, it does not appear to be that way. I would certainly agree with you on that. That's the challenge that maybe this year finally pushes them over the precipice, if you will, and they spend some money in that regard. They do have some good young talent in the system, but again, probably not enough to overcome the misses and the injuries, and that's the result.
12-50. Do you care how bad, like the White Sox, historically bad? Like if you guys are going to be bad, do you want to be historically the worst team in baseball history?
That's a great question. I mean, and sometimes I say that to people with a bit of humor. You know, hey, if we're going to have a bad season, let's make it historic. I remember talking with Len Casper, who does the White Sox. Lenny, a great broadcaster, last season as they were going through it, and he says, "Hey, it is what it is, and you hope that something changes out of it." And so I guess out of this year, Dan, you hope that it does finally. I don't think it'll be any kind of seismic change, but you hope there's some kind of change to not go through this again.
Yeah, you brought up the point I was going to bring up. Do you reach out to fellow announcers who have gone through this? Because I can't imagine, you got to sit there. You got to sit there and call it, and it's right in front of you. And but, hey, you guys are only 25 games behind the Dodgers. So it was 27 a week ago, Jack.
That's right. We're making progress. The one thing out of that, and Len Casper and I talked about that last year, the advantage with radio is you have to be so descriptive. So you can use that. I think it's harder on the TV side where you're not doing all that basic description. The video provides that. So you end up talking more conversationally. That's the challenge, I think.
Keep your head up. Keep your sense of humor. And I think you're going to need it, Jack, here in the second half of the season.
Well, Dan, I appreciate the chance to visit with you. And, it's still a great job. 40 years of them letting me go to the ballpark and paying me for that. I'm doing okay.
Yeah, I mean, look, there are 30 Major League, 60 if you get the partner, Major League Baseball jobs. And guys I know who are lucky enough to do play-by-play, they say the best thing is to broadcast a game that your team wins. The second best thing is to broadcast a game where your team loses. It's still a great job. Corrigan does a great job, and that's, part of what you have to do when you're in that job. And I've listened to Charlie and Dave do the Nats for years. They're both great. And sometimes they're at their best when the team stinks and they got a blowout game and they got to keep you entertained, and they do that. And that's part of the art of the job, part of the skill. And Jack Corrigan, as he says, he's been doing it for 40 years, and he's got one of those seasons with the Colorado Rockies. Interesting tonight at Nats Park. You know who's on the mound for the Texas Rangers? Patrick Corbin. Patrick Corbin had one of the strangest runs for an athlete that I've ever seen in this area. Maybe you could compare it to Robert Griffin III, but there are a lot of circumstances that went into the great year that Griffin had, followed by the years where he couldn't even get a uniform for a game. The next 3 years after that magical season in 2012, as he went totally downhill to the point where he didn't take a snap in his fourth year with the team. Patrick Corbin was a stand-up guy. Unlike Griffin, didn't get hurt. It wasn't an injury that caused any of this. You might be able to make the case that because of the way Davey Martinez used his starters as relievers as well in the World Series to win that one in 2019, that a price may have been paid for that. And you might even be able to make the case that Steven Strasburg's career was essentially ended on his way to being World Series MVP, because after that he only pitched about 33 innings and had to retire. He's done, physically finished. Corbin wasn't a physical thing. He was terrific during that 2019 season. And when the season ended, you looked at the Nats and you go, whew, wow, they've just locked up Strasburg. He's the World Series MVP. Hadn't missed a start in 2019. You can count on him. Max Scherzer always takes the ball. Max Scherzer always ready to go. You got a third terrific starter in Patrick Corbin. Not many teams have that. You don't have that kind of rotation in most major league clubhouses. Well, they had it, and they had a lot of talent still on the team. A young Juan Soto. They had the makings of a team that could go on for a while. And then the bottom dropped out, and Corbin was part of the picture there. Strasburg, too, of course. But Corbin, in those last 5 years here, it's not like he missed games. He was always taking the ball. He was always going out there and always giving up a bunch of runs. His ERA was always, if it wasn't at double digits, flirting with double digits. And here's a nice story by Chelsea Janes in the Post today about the return of Corbin on the mound tonight for the Rangers. Then they picked him up only because they had injuries. John Gray had a wrist injury and Cody Bradford had an elbow problem, so they picked him up. He's made 10 starts for them. And this is what Chelsea says about what he did here in the last 5 years. Whatever the other statistics say, few pitchers in baseball have been better than Corbin. Since the start of the 2016 season, only Philadelphia Phillies right-hander Aaron Nola has thrown more. So he eats up innings. Didn't eat him up very well in his last 5 years here, but he gets out there and he doesn't complain, goes out and does the best he can. They take him out. I was at his last start, the one he pitched against Kansas City at the end of last season, and he pitched well for a few innings and then, got lit up, and you thought, well, that might be it. That might be the end of his career. But he's having a resurgence now with Texas. His ERA is 3.71 with 41 strikeouts in 53 and a third innings. That's some solid stuff. There are pitchers making, $20, $25, $30 million a year that have not pitched like that. He's holding his hitters to just a 249 average, lowest since the Nationals won the World Series in 2019. And there's reason to believe that, maybe he's at 35 back and not better than ever, but good enough to hang around for a long time. Also, this interesting connection, he and Max Scherzer are still friends. They have homes together in the offseason in Jupiter, Florida. So when Corbin signed with the Rangers, the same week his wife gave birth to their third child, as Chelsea Janes writes here, Scherzer knew the Corbin family would be scrambling for somewhere to stay in Texas. It just so happened that his house in the Arlington area he still owned. He pitched for the Rangers, as you know, in 2023 and 2024. He offered it to his former teammate. Corbin has been living there since, though he wouldn't say how much. Scherzer, notorious in his day for getting delinquent Nationals to pay their fantasy football debts, is charging him rent. I don't think he even remembers he has that house half the time. You know how much money Max Scherzer's made in his career? So, I got an extra house here in Arlington. Would you like to live there? And this happens a lot, by the way, that because you're talking about prime real estate, and you have the combination of the former player wanting to get some use out of it, whether it's a rental or a purchase, and you have the incoming player who's making enough money to afford that house, either to buy it or to rent it. So it just makes sense that it's kind of athletes like ships in the night, and you'll find that throughout the country that there are athletes who are living in athletes' houses who have either been traded or left town or retired, or for whatever reason they're not there anymore. Anyway. Coming up, Eli Manning's conversation on the glue guys and react to Aaron Rodgers heading to Pittsburgh. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630. So you looked at the matchup between Oklahoma City and the Indiana Pacers, and you said, they should make short work of the Pacers, especially when they're up 12 at the half and they're up 15 points in the fourth quarter. But Indiana did it again. It just may be one of those years, It's like the Miracle Mets of 1969. In many ways, this reminds me of the Golden State Warriors against the Washington Bullets. I know that's hard for you to get your head around if you're younger, but 50 years ago, the Bullets were big favorites to win, and they got swept. Don't think this is going to be a sweep, but it's like the Rocky fight. Yeah, he thinks he can win. He thinks we think it's a show. He thinks it's a fight. This is really stunning what has developed, and we'll see where it goes. Brian Windhorst had some thoughts on it last night with Scott Van Pelt. We'll get to those. I do want to spend a moment here on the Aaron Rodgers circumstance. It's the way he likes to suck up the oxygen in the room, and the way he does this passive-aggressive stuff. Well, I'm not sure I want to play. If they want to move on without me, I got some personal things I got to deal with. So the day it's announced and the time it's announced that he's going to go to Pittsburgh and he's going to sign with the Steelers and participate in minicamp next week is right in the midst of all the Trump and Musk stuff, which probably had to bother him. Also, it's funny, I'm seeing on like ESPN and various other outlets that they do the mock-up of what he's going to look like in a Steelers uniform. They got him in number 12. He ain't going to wear number 12 because number 12 last week said that number 12 from the Packers can chew on bark. So Terry Bradshaw's not giving up his number for Aaron Rodgers. Remember when Rodgers signed with the Jets, Joe Namath, who was the last quarterback to win a Super Bowl for them back in 1969, said, I'll give up my number 12 for Aaron Rodgers. Sure, I want to see the Jets win another Super Bowl. And Rodgers correctly said, no, I'll take my college number 8. So I would imagine that he'll be wearing number 8 when he takes the field for the Pittsburgh Steelers next week at minicamp. But he is apparently going to sign there. He's 41. He'll be 42 before the end of next season. So this is not any kind of a long-term solution for them. But it is happening. Rodgers is going to play one more year at least, and it's going to be with Mike Tomlin and the Pittsburgh Steelers. Tony Kornheiser, Pablo Torre in for Mike Wilbon yesterday with their look at what this is going to look like.
The 41-year-old Rodgers has timed his decision to come after this week's voluntary OTAs, but prior to next week's mandatory minicamp. Pablo, what is your reaction to this news?
My reaction is that 2024 Pablo would have loved to get an alert on his cell phone saying Aaron Rodgers signs with an NFL team. Just doesn't hit the same, Tony. And I understand that the Steelers, they're trying to do a thing that in sports nerd conferences they refer to as high variance. Aaron Rodgers has a very high ceiling. He could be the greatest quarterback in the league. The floor, though, gets everybody fired. And so it's just funny. It's funny that the Steelers are in a place where all the breadcrumbs lead to Aaron Rodgers. We knew it was coming, and yet the risk is as stated.
Yeah, I'm not going to disagree with that, although I'm going to say that the best place for Aaron Rodgers is a team coached by Mike Tomlin, who has watched him for an awful lot of years, and I think they will come to a behavioral détente very soon. I'm one of those guys who thinks that Aaron Rodgers can still throw it. I watched him with the Jets. I mean, I think this is the best spot for him.
Okay.
And there are two things that I would say. First of all, right now, 3 of the starting quarterbacks in that division are Joe Burrow, Aaron Rodgers, and Lamar Jackson. There's no division like that. There's no division like that in the league. And the second thing is, I want to know who's going to be the first person who goes to Aaron Rodgers' locker and hands him bark to chew on. That's when you know Aaron Rodgers is okay with that squad, when that happens.
Tony, I just like how we have to speak in the language of détentes as if Aaron Rodgers is, on the road to Yalta. Like, that's part of his story now, is that it's always diplomacy. Yeah. Who's going to be in charge, who's not. And look, when you say that he might be, he certainly is a guy who can still throw it. The question to me also is like, well, who's he throwing to? The Steelers have that all figured out yet? I mean, they have DK Metcalf. That's good. Pat Freiermuth, okay. What happens now? What happens now? Like, you're right. The AFC North is really, really tough when it comes to the quarterbacks.
It's loaded. It's loaded.
I just haven't seen Aaron Rodgers be anywhere close to the guy that can hang with the caliber of names that you mentioned.
And I understand that. And he's brought that upon himself in the last couple of years. And the behavior has made him the object of derision. I'm just telling you that if you stand there and you don't know it's Aaron Rodgers and you see him throw it, you go, wow, he can still throw it.
Okay. But again, he is 41 going on 42. He really hasn't been that good, including, of course, the injured year where he only played four plays for the Jets. But he hasn't really been Aaron Rodgers in 3 years. So at an age where most guys are retired, not named Tom Brady, he's going to try and saddle up on a new team where he's going to have limited – I mean, he's smart enough, savvy enough, and maybe even has a copy of the Steelers playbook. He's had plenty of time to digest that. But this is going to be, I think, another kind of a sideshow. I don't see this working out very well. The impression I get from people who are Steeler fans is like, okay, yeah, sure, why not? But there's not real enthusiasm for this. Nothing like boy, the people were popping out of their skin who were Jet fans 2 years ago. Oh, my God, we got Aaron Rodgers. Oh, wow. Finally a quarterback. Best quarterback since Namath. Let's go. And they had a good team. They had, good defense and a good core of players, good young players. They thought he was the missing piece. That's another thing that you see over time in all sports, particularly in football. If you think you're one player away, you're not. And there's no greater example of that than the Minnesota Vikings, who in the 1989 season thought that they were one running back away from being a Super Bowl team. That's when the running back was a more prominent position than at least it was until a couple of years ago. It's changing with what Saquon Barkley did for the Eagles. But at that time, 1989, if you had a top-notch running back, that was going to make a huge difference for you. So the Vikings essentially traded away their future to the Dallas Cowboys to get Herschel Walker. And Herschel Walker was initially good. Mike Wilbon wrote a column, oh, boy, the Vikings really fleeced the Cowboys. Well, as we saw long-term, not the case. The Cowboys had the makings of 3 Super Bowl championship teams off that deal. So the one player away didn't really work out for the Minnesota Vikings. I don't see it working out for the Pittsburgh Steelers. The one thing I will say, it's a different kind of a cat, but Mike Tomlin knows how to handle different personalities. You didn't hear about Antonio Brown being Meshuggah when he played for Pittsburgh. And then once he got out, then there were all kinds of issues. He did win a Super Bowl with Tom Brady. But Tomlin knows how to handle various types of personalities, including this one. A little bit different, this passive-aggressive thing that Rodgers does. But, they make the playoffs on a regular basis. They've never had a losing season under Tomlin. And however good he may be, Rodgers at this point, I think they can still be at least a decent team with him. That's not the goal. The goal is to win a Super Bowl. Will they be able to do that with Rodgers? I highly doubt it. As for the NBA Finals and what happened last night, stunning if you went to bed like me at the half with 19 turnovers committed by Indiana. They were down 12 points. They committed 25 turnovers for the game, but the stat that keeps blowing me away is off those 25 turnovers, Oklahoma City scored only 11 points. But Indiana trails the entire game. It comes down to the final seconds, and as my buddy Mark Boyle called it on Pacers Radio.
They're not going to call a timeout. Halliburton has it with 3, driving with 2, pulling up, and hitting with 0.3 of a second to go. How many more times can this team do that?
And Halliburton gives the Pacers their only lead of the game with 0.3 seconds to go, and it held up for a 1-point win. Halliburton, not a big scoring night, 14 points, 10 rebounds. Pascal Siakam had 19 and 10. Hit a big shot down the stretch, but they had enough to win, and Oklahoma City's got to be kicking themselves for the opportunities that they let slip away. Brian Windhorst covering the series in Oklahoma City with Scott Van Pelt. Here's what they said about it.
What is it? What is it about this Pacers team that continues to allow this to happen?
I'm telling you, you'd think I was making this up before the game. I talked to some people at the Pacers, and they said, God, this is a good team we're playing. They do so many things well. Shea is a beast. There's no way to stop him. The way we're going to win is we're going to have to play from behind, and we're going to have to make him feel a little bit of heat down the stretch because we get more comfortable, and they tend to tense up a little bit. And then we're going to need to chip away, and then we're going to get down to the end, and we're going to give Tyrese a chance. And if we get that, we'll be happy. I mean, Scott, they called it down to practically the spot on the court. And now, on one hand, you'd say, well, that's just, good luck. It's just somebody talking out the side of their neck. But this is how they've won. They've won 3 games almost exactly like this. And this is how they are comfortable playing.
Right.
And the Thunder, and this has been said before in the playoffs, nobody won by more points during a regular season. Their number got a little wonky because they lost by 40 in the one game in the last round to Minnesota. But they do have a little bit of a thing where they play a little tight, and the Pacers felt like if they could get into that zone that they could win, and that's what happened.
I think you saw the Pacers just get more comfortable on offense in the second half, and I pointed this out. When they actually shot the ball, they made a lot of made a lot of buckets. They're the best shooting team in the playoffs, highest scoring team in the playoffs. They made 18 threes in this game. When they stopped turning the ball over every other time they touched it, which they did in the first half, they're actually able to compete in this game. I think that bodes well for them because I don't assume they're going to turn it over like that in the first half because that's as good a defense, I think, as I've ever seen.
Okay, so I would also say that they did something that they don't normally do, which was they went to Andrew Nembhard. Andrew Nembhard had controls of the offense down the stretch. Yes, Halliburton makes the big shot, but Halliburton wasn't making a massive impact like he normally does.
Right.
And by the way, you look at Nembhard's box score, it doesn't look like he had a dominant game. He had 6 assists.
Right.
But they went to him. Halliburton is going to have the historic highlight. The hero of this game is Andrew Nembhard. Nembhard's guarding.
That's what Dora said.
Guarding Shea at one end, and he's running their offense at the other. And that got them confidence. That stopped turning the ball over. They calmed down, and his face was exactly the same. And he's getting into it with Shea. He's showing the mettle. That's because this team has done that. They were totally comfortable in this environment. Mm-hmm. And there's something to be said for that. And they're still the underdog, I think, but now they've planted a seed. They've planted a seed that, it's almost like when you watch the Pacers, when the Pacers come out and start playing the Thunder, they know that the Thunder play really tough defense, right? Mm-hmm. They've studied it. They've tried to mimic it in practice. They've been told it, but they're not really ready for it. And they're turning the ball all over the place because the pressure that they get isn't something that you can mimic. Well, you can't necessarily mimic what it's like to have the Pacers walking you down. And so the Pacers had to deal with learning what it's like to play against the Thunder defense, and they struggled. And the Thunder just had to learn what it's like to get walked down by one of the great walk-down teams we've ever seen.
And I didn't allow that lead to balloon cartoonishly the way it has so often.
That's right, because typically what the Thunder do, they get up by 15, they put their foot on your throat, and they're up by 35. Mm-hmm. They never let it get past where it was 15, 16. They kept pulling it back. But I really did think the Thunder were going to handle their business. Shea hits the three at the end of the third quarter.
I thought that was monstrous. And then the turnover to where Williams takes it in for the dunk, and it's 15, and it feels like the Avalanche is on.
In all honesty, you could have had Lou Dort at this desk at the end of the game. Because
that was who I was expecting to talk to.
The defensive play that he makes, that's a historic defensive play. That could go on the finals reel. That's how great that defensive play is. Mm-hmm. I didn't think it was a choke. I think they got walked down. And that, if you're looking forward in this series, that's what you got to be thinking about. And that's what the Pacers knew coming in. And it's one thing if I'm saying it, but I'm telling you, Scott, the guy practically gave me the script on how they thought the game was going to go. And I'm not going to forget that.
I've read stuff about believing something could be true, thinking something could be true, and knowing something's going to be true, right? Like this Indiana Pacers team knows that it can do this because they did it against everybody in the playoffs. And now they've done it here. I mean, you still got to win 3 more games against a team that's 180. But now the Thunder got to win 4 or 6. Has your view of what this series has changed as a result of what just happened?
Yeah, because I spent the last week saying, well, the Knicks probably should be a 2-2 in that series. Even though the Knicks are, down 3-2, it should be the Knicks up 3-2 because you spike a game that you have. It doesn't always come back to bite you, but boy, it can come back to bite you.
Yeah, but the point you just made is it's not that Oklahoma City vomited on itself and gave this away. It's that they got walked down by a team that continues to walk teams down.
That's Scott Van Pelt and Brian Windhorst, just another staggering stat, as Hubie Brown would say, to add into the stew. Pacers have had 8 games in the postseason so far where they've been down at least 15 points. They're 5-3 in those games. 5-3. In games where they trail by 15 points. It's just staggering what they're able to do. It's got to be great for ABC because we've got to learn a lesson here. These games are not over when Oklahoma City is up big in the fourth quarter, as they were up 15 last night. So we got Game 2 coming up on Sunday. Those of us who like to go to bed early get a little bit of a break. This is supposed to be an 8 o'clock tip instead of an 8:30 tip, but it's probably going to be like 8:15 as the 8:30 tip is 8:45 and whatever. But we should get to bed before midnight on Sunday. The Belmont tomorrow is not going to be in Elmont, New York. It's at Saratoga Springs. It's the second year in a row they've had it there because I guess they're refurbishing the track. Same thing with the Preakness for next year. It's 7:04, which probably isn't a problem for most people, but a little bit of an issue for me because I want to watch the George Clooney Good Night and Good Luck live broadcast of the play on Broadway. It's going to be on CNN, so I guess I'm going to have to TiVo that, but that's a small problem. And what's fueling sports radio for the last 24 hours is this report that Terry McLaurin is frustrated over his contract talks. Prediction, this will blow over. I know it's given lots of fuel to talking heads for a while, but I believe that they will have a deal in place by the time minicamp starts next Tuesday. I have a hard time believing with all this brotherhood talk that they use and all the good feelings that are coming out that they won't have a deal done with Terry McLaurin by the time they take the field next Tuesday. Could be wrong. That's just my prediction. Bram is coming up next. I'll see you Monday morning, 9 a.m.